everybody, and welcome to the Goot Reaction. I'm Joe Goot, your host, and with me, as always, is my main man from the Midwest, Triple M. And we also have an exciting special guest this week. His name is Brendan. He's one of my best buds in the whole world, and he's here with me in Portland. So it's the three of us this time, and two of us are here chilling in Portland, in front of a fire pit, smoking cigars, just maxing and relaxing. So we got a good vibe going. I don't know what's going on in the Midwest, but you know.
A little bit of snow and a lot of cold.
There we go. That sounds about right. All right, awesome. So this week we're going to be going through a couple awesome movies that we like to get into every year. Brendan and I have this tradition where we always try to get to National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and Scrooge. So it's got two of our favorite actors, and then there's actually one actor that is in both movies, Brian Doyle Murray, Bill Murray's older brother. So that's a fun fact. So yeah, let's get into it. Basically, we love watching these movies. It kind of gets us into the spirit of the season, and it's they're both hilarious and so quotable. So we're going to be dropping some clips in here and there just to kind of spice things up a little bit. But yeah, there's some interesting themes too that go across both movies in terms of kind of some class struggle stuff. Some interesting commentary on corporate greed and sort of that ambition and the journey that both main characters take. So Frank Cross and Scrooge, goes from being just kind of one of those heartless, super ambitious, super successful guys, and he has a revelation over the course of the film. And then Clark Griswold in Vacation, he also has his own realizations at the end, and he's not as much of a change arc because he's kind of just a well-meaning doofus anyway, but that part really doesn't change with him. But yeah, he also does have his revelation at the end. So let's get into it. Where do you guys want to start? You want to go into Christmas Vacation and just talk about some of the things in that film?
Yeah, I'm definitely game for that.
Cool. Let's do it. All right. So just, I mean, it's a classic film. We're not going to break it down like, scene by scene or anything, but if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and definitely check it out. It starts with Clark and Ellen welcoming their family to visit for the holidays and stay with them at their house in Chicago. And the kind of the main through line is that Clark's waiting for this big Christmas bonus that he normally gets from his company, and that's kind of the tension throughout the film. Is he going to get this bonus? And some of his coworkers, they get their bonuses, and he's just waiting, and so he's continually getting more and more stressed out as the season goes on, and he basically starts losing his mind that he's not going to get this bonus, that there's something wrong, and he's put a deposit down on putting an in-ground pool in their backyard.
In Chicago.
It's
dual purpose. It's a skating rink and a swimming pool.
Yeah.
He's losing his mind because of his family staying with him too, right? Both sets of in-laws, his crazy cousin. Yeah, I think that's just as much of the stress as the whether or not he's gonna get his bonus.
Yeah, actually, I saw a great meme today, and it was saying the most unbelievable thing about Christmas Vacation is the fact that they welcomed both pairs of in-laws 10 days before Christmas.
Yeah, that's a test in patience for sure. Yeah, and the fact that they're just kind of competing, Clark's parents are great and they're supportive of him, and his antics don't seem too far off because they know him really well, but then his in-laws are just not having it. Like, they're putting him down left and right, and when he puts up the lights and they're not working, and his father-in-law is like, or I think his daughter says, he worked really hard, Grandpa, and and this father-in-law says, wow, so do washing machines.
I think that's actually one of the best things about these movies is how relatable they are for the common person. And I don't have any in-laws, thank God, but I know, like, even my sister's in-laws, when they come for Christmas, I get about 4 hours and I'm done. So I cannot imagine 2 weeks of them living in the same space as you. And I do actually remember a time when that was more regular, when family would come to stay at a house and you just, like, kids on couches, grandparents in beds, on twin beds, You just cram the house full. And it's so funny to think about that now because, like, absolutely not. I will pay for them to be in a hotel. They're not going to be in my space 24/7. They might come over for dinner, spend the day there, fine, but going to need some decompression time.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember just doing the classic like Christmas party at my aunt and uncle's house and my dad's side. And my mom was always welcome. You know, they always treated her really well and everything. But just even the little things like going into the bedroom and seeing on the bed like 50 coats piled up. And, you know, that was the one bedroom for the coats. And
there was always the coat room.
Like yep.
Yeah, a lot of those things always just felt forced, right? Like, you know, we got to do it because it's tradition. But, you know, 3/4 of the people that were there probably didn't actually want to be there. You know, and I think what Brenton said there about, you know, how everybody used to do that, and then I think, well, the divorce rate in this country is what 50-some%, probably for a reason.
Yep.
Accurate.
Absolutely.
And that's funny you mentioned that, you know, most of the people that were there, we'll even say half of them didn't really want to be there. It's funny because even my family, who tends to be pretty Christmas centric and pretty family centric, have really whittled it down over the years to kind of our immediate family, my grandparents, maybe one cousin, as opposed to 17 cousins, 9 aunts and uncles and their husbands and wives and all these people crammed into a house. It's really whittled down to the people we actually want to spend time with.
Yeah, that's definitely happened on my side too. Well, granted, I'm out in Portland, so I don't get back usually for the holidays. It's crazy to travel during Thanksgiving or Christmas. So
it is.
Oh, just a tad.
I hadn't heard that.
It costs more to go to Ohio than it does to fly to Iceland, I believe. So if that tells you anything,
let's go to Reykjavik.
Yeah, why not?
It's probably warmer there right now.
Yeah.
God, yeah.
And they have those awesome like soaking pools, you know, with the natural springs and stuff. Oh, I could get into that right now. Yeah. Anyway, and then there's things like this that you have to deal with too.
If you don't remember, this here is Rocky. Got a kiss for me? You better take a rain check on that, all right? He's got a lip fungus ain't identified yet.
You never know what strange funguses are coming to your house when you have the family over, so you always have to take that into account. Get the Neosporin ready,
especially if they bring dumpster diving Rottweilers.
Oh, that too. Yeah, Snots is great. He's a bit of a
love that dog.
Got a little bit of Mississippi Leghound in him.
Yeah, what does he say if he starts going? You better just let him finish it out, or you got that
little
teed up too.
Once it gets started, it's best to just let him finish.
He's cute, ain't he? Only problem is he's got a little bit of Mississippi Leghound in him. If the mood catches him right, he'll grab your leg and just go to town. You don't want him around if you wear his short pants, if you know what I mean. Word of warning, though, if he does lay into you, it's best to just let him finish.
Yep.
I was actually saying the other day when we were watching this that it's hilarious that Randy Quaid as Cousin Eddie basically just became Cousin Eddie in real life. Like, that dude is just nuts now.
Yeah, foreshadowing.
Yeah,
art
imitates life.
That it does.
A little bit of Cousin Eddie and the guy from Independence Day. I forget his character's name in there.
Oh, absolutely. Good call. Good call. The crop duster.
Yeah. So next time you're wearing short pants, be on the lookout for Rottweilers in the area. So so like you said, he's so obsessed about this bonus because it's, as he explains in the film, it's part of his salary, it's an expectation, and his boss, who again is Brian Doyle Murray, he goes on his own and decides to get rid of Christmas bonuses for the year to try to save some money for the corporation, and that leads to some problems later on, and they actually call him out for it. And towards the end of the night, Christmas Eve, Clark's like, hey, if anybody is looking for a gift for me, after he gets his Jelly of the Month Club bonus, which Eddie says is the gift that keeps on giving, Clark, and that it is indeed. So once he gets his quote unquote bonus for the year, he at that point he totally loses his mind and just says, "Hey, if anyone's looking for a gift for me," he wants his boss Frank Shirley there wrapped up in a big bow and brought right there to his house. And so Cousin Eddie takes that as a good idea, and then
as a literal request.
Yeah, as a literal request, being that he's not the brightest bulb out there. So yeah, and by that point though, Clark's staring into doom. He doesn't have enough money in his checking account to cover the deposit that he put on the pool, and he thinks he's not going to get the money that he deserves. And so Cousin Eddie goes and grabs his boss, and then basically he gets called out for it. His even his wife, when the police come and get his wife and they're dealing with the kidnapping situation there, they even the chief of police,
that's pretty low, mister. If I had a rubber hose, I would beat you.
Yeah, so even the chief of police understands that was a low blow and not a cool move at all. And the boss's wife, says the same thing. Is all the cheap ways to save a buck. And so yeah, I think as Brendan and I were talking earlier, how it's like it used to be pretty common that bonuses were, in corporate world. Clark works for I believe a food manufacturing conglomerate of some kind. He's a food additives designer. Glamorous role.
Cereal varnish.
Yeah, non-nutritive cereal varnishes are his bailiwick. And so yeah, so he expects this bonus and it's part of his salary. And when they eliminate it, then to try to save some money, it comes back and bites him. So I think that's what a lot of people have gone through, whether it's bonuses or just not getting raises, and people seeing their buying power just diminish over the years. So and you actually see that in a similar thing in Scrooged, where Frank Cross's assistant is at home with her family, and it's getting close to Christmas, and she's like, or her mother asks her, "Hey, did you get that bonus that you were supposed to get?" And she's a really loyal assistant. She's like enables Frank Cross to to do his job well, and she's just a great worker. And she says, "Yeah, I'm drying my hair with it right now." So he got her a towel with the company logo on it. So another case of getting the shaft right before Christmas. So I think that's a pretty common theme among a lot of people. Again, whether it's a bonus or whether it's purchasing power going down through not getting raises that even keep up with inflation, that kind of thing. So it's one of those themes that kind of carries through both films.
But the movie basically having come out in 1989, well, Scrooge came out in 89. Do you remember what year? Is it 91 for?
I think it's the other way around. I think Scrooge was 88. And
Christmas Vacation 89.
89, yeah.
So I'm not sure how you guys have done it. In your corporate world, you were in the workforce probably a good 15 years before me, as far as legitimate career style compensation. But I've gotten one Christmas bonus in my entire working life. No job, and granted, I've had a lot of jobs in both leisure entertainment and then sales. And, our bonuses are basically our commissions, which is not really a bonus so much as an agreement of compensation for work accomplished. So, you having worked in the digital world and having worked in a lot of corporate settings, and Triple, I'm not sure, what your experience has been, but was the Christmas bonus a much more dependable factor when you were going through these jobs and you knew December was coming and getting a bonus? I remember my parents getting bonuses. My mom, having worked in the car dealership industry forever, one year the owner had basically taken the year off. He'd been all over the place, but not in town. And her and the other two managers ran that dealership, and he paid them handsomely as a Christmas bonus for that. And I remember, like, that year our family went on a cruise because she got some massive Christmas bonus. And I remember that always being a thing for both of my parents. When they got the Christmas bonus, somehow we went out to dinner that night, or we got an extra treat, And I remember being like, I can't wait till I get Christmas bonuses. And I think I got a $500 cash bonus from my job at a cigar lounge.
Yeah, for me, it's never been really a Christmas bonus, but there's some. It's changed over the years, but some bonus structure that's paid out usually kind of springtime, based on like previous year's results. Um, it's been varying degrees of whether or not you could bank on it or not. So it was best not to necessarily plan for it in part of your overall compensation, and actually, yeah, treat it more like a bonus when you got it. But yeah, even growing up, like kind of same thing. My parents, it's kind of same thing, but it was always, yeah, something you celebrated when you got it. But like I said, best not to really plan on it being there just in case, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, in my case, I've spent most of my career in marketing and splitting between agency work and then in-house work. And I would say on the agency side, I don't remember ever seeing a bonus, honestly, even though those are for-profit companies and they made a certain amount of profit every year and they could have easily kicked some of that back to their employees. Didn't really see that. But then when I started working in-house towards the second half of my career, then it was definitely a bonus structure in place for most of those places. But it was very similar to what Triple M mentioned, where it was kind of a end of the fiscal year in the springtime bonus. And, again, you couldn't really count on it, but sometimes it was 200% a target and everyone was really happy. Other times it was just a flat, like what you would expect to get based on your employment contract. So it definitely varied, but and so those things were certainly very nice. But again, I've also been in situations where I've worked really hard and the company's done well and there hasn't been any kind of bonus. So I think that's just case by case.
So I think like in the movie, what I picked up on along the lines of what you were saying, Joe, is that there's a bit of a disconnect between the higher ups and the lower part of the workforce, right? Where it's nothing for the higher up to say, "Oh, we're just taking that bonus away to save money." Not, and they've disconnected from like I said, from the lower part of the workforce there that is much more reliant on that money. And I think the case in Scrooged was even more of a difference between the two, because obviously Clark Griswold, you could look at his house and everything and see that he's doing all right. But the assistant character in Scrooge was much more of that bonus probably meant a lot more,
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I would say, Clark, he's buying a luxury item, which is a swimming pool. You know what I mean? Not trying to put food on the table with it.
Yeah, very true. Not trying to put a overly cooked turkey that has alien insides in it.
Well, and this was at a time when houses didn't cost 50% of your annual salary.
That's true too. Yeah.
Your mortgage wasn't 30% of your 30 to 40% of your average income after taxes. So a single income household like Grizz could afford a multi-bedroom, multi-level house of that size with that kind of lot in a neighborhood that's not clearly nice enough and could be considered middle class. When in reality, that house now would be a nice, handsome $1.5 million home, and very few people could afford that right now.
That thing had a curved staircase in it, man. Come on,
yeah,
that's at least $1.5 million.
And he fixed the newel post, so I mean, there's one repair done.
Yeah, but then, like you said, Triple M, to contrast that with the assistant, she was a single mom living in looked like a very small apartment, with her mom there living with them and 4 or 5 kids, and obviously medical bills with her youngest son, dealing with the trauma of seeing his father killed, and not choosing not to speak. And so she even mentions like she drops $200 on an appointment to try to get some insight into that. And just thinking back, like $200 back in 1988, that's a decent amount of money.
It's like
just
$1,000 now.
Yeah, just for like an actual consultation or whatever. So I mean, the fact that she was willing to put the money on the line for her family shows where her heart's at. And but also very sad that such a large portion of her, probably her weekly budget, just goes to healthcare. So
couldn't even afford a Christmas tree. Had to decorate a kid.
that's true. They did dress him up with all the accoutrements. They did,
That
and they
poor
put the
kid.
lights on him too.
Don't plug him in. Oh,
Absolutely. So let's I don't know. Let's switch and talk about Scrooged a little bit. We've already been kind of merging over into that film a little bit with some of the similarities, and I think to me the most interesting thing about that is clearly it's a retelling of Charles Dickens' Christmas Story, and or is that the title? A Christmas Story?
Christmas Carol.
A Christmas Carol. Thank you. A Christmas Story is a movie.
You'll shoot your eye out.
That's another movie. Yeah. Another classic Christmas time film. But yeah, Christmas Carol. Thank you. And so it's a modern retelling of that, and it's about the emotional and philosophical journey that Frank Cross goes on to become a reformed man and see the error of his ways. And I think there's similarities there too, because you've got Clark on one hand who's just trying so hard to create the perfect Christmas, and he realizes at the end that it's not really about all the gifts and creating the perfect meal and the perfect environment for his family. He just being there and just having the family and being there for each other is the most important thing. And I think that's what Frank Cross realizes at the end of his journey as well in Scrooge, is that it's about the people. And when he finally brings back Claire into the picture and realizes that he missed out on a good portion of his life without her being in it, and sees the value in that relationship, and so changes his ways. So I don't know, have you guys ever experienced anything like that, or any comments on that one?
Well, an interesting fact about Scrooge that I was thinking about the other day was, after the ghost of Christmas Past comes, he sees his childhood, his mom, he feels that emotion. He comes back to the present day and he's still Scrooge, and he's still Frank Cross. He hasn't really changed. And then the ghost of Christmas Present comes and he sees his brother with all of his friends and family there, and his brother's still sticking up for him. And he has these moments of real clarity on what he missed and what he does miss in his life. But then he comes back to Frank Cross. He's still Frank Cross. He doesn't really have this paradigm shift of I'm a new man until he watches himself burn alive in a coffin.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes out of the elevator alive, and now he has an appreciation, and now he's no longer. So it's like this trifecta where he had to see the end, and how no one came to his cremation except for his own brother and sister-in-law. At which point comes back to present day, new man, and there's that happy ending. There's that Scrooge go buy me a goose situation. And did it take watching? Do you have to conceive of your own death before you appreciate what you have or what you had prior? And I mean, obviously that's the way the Dickens story goes, but that character himself, even after being like, I missed Claire, I love Claire, every time she came back into his life in present life, he would have these moments of poignancy with her and emotion, and he was still very much in love with her. And then he couldn't help himself, and he would go back to his default Frank Cross selfishness, narcissism, and look out for yourself, all the way up until he saw the ghost of Christmas Future.
Yeah,
but I think every one of those little experiences kind of chipped away at it, though, right? It's not like they had no effect. It's, it kind of, the first one kind of ate into it a little bit, but you're right, he bounced back as soon as it wasn't right in front of his face. Then he bounced right back to his ways. But he carried a little bit of that with him each time, I think. And then the straw that broke the camel's back there was when he saw his own cremation, basically.
Yeah, that is interesting. The finality of that and the seriousness of it, I guess, and the fact that, which it kind of makes you wonder. Then is it the death? Is it the wow? Like, I thought there would be more people that would be here to participate in this because I made an impact on so many people's lives. Like, being a narcissist, he probably felt like, he wasn't as cruel and harsh as he really was. He felt like his success would translate into more celebration. And when it wasn't there, then he was like, oh shit, this is not good.
Yeah, I mean, he initially was confused. He thought it was his brother's coffin because he saw his sister-in-law.
That's true.
And then his brother walks into the frame. He's like, wait, who's in the box? And because that couldn't have been his funeral. He's too big of a deal for it to just be one person standing there, until he's like, oh shit, this is me in here. And he's so casual about it at first until he realizes, and then they're putting the box in, and then his feet go on fire, and they do this crazy thing where he's outside trying to pull in the casket, and he's in the casket on fire, which is actually a really cool effect.
Yeah.
I think there's an aspect too that you always think you're going to have time to fix things that are wrong. Right?
Yeah.
So even though he saw some of those things, he's like, oh yeah, I'll have time to fix it before I'm done. But then you hit that point where time's run out, and that's, kind of what makes you feel that, oh, I really do have to go fix it now, or I might not get the opportunity to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think that ties back to when he had the first vision of his old boss with his golf clothes on and, all rotten and the mouse crawling out of his head and everything.
I don't mind you shooting me, Frank, but take it easy on the Bacardi.
Yeah, I mean, he strolls in there and just, slaps Frank around a little bit, and he's like, hey, man, you don't have time, because, like, look at me, I was on the golf course, and I think he said he got struck by lightning or a heart attack. Either way, I think it was a heart attack. Yeah. And so, explaining, like, hey, you don't know what's going to happen. You might not have the time, and you've got to turn things around now. So that kind of ties into the ending there, and just saying, hey, you're going to regret it if you don't make some changes. And so I'm going to force you to confront what you need to change.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a pattern of, you saw his parents. His mom seemed okay, but, his dad was pretty, I don't want to say out of the picture, but I don't recall, they were together in that flashback. I don't remember if he said they divorced or anything, but, he was clearly raised by television. There's constant references to how much time he spent in front of the TV, which shaped his career, but then also probably carried that disconnect with him, right? He's disconnected from the people close to him when he was younger, and then just carried that into his adult life, and came back to bite him.
Yeah.
And they had that very stereotypical 50s kind of arrangement with the family, with the gruff, blue collar dad coming home from the butcher shop, the mom sitting on the couch with her kid, and then the dad not really having time to be a dad. Even when he got home, he's exhausted, so he lays down on the couch. He puts his hat on his eyes, so he's not there to be a dad. He's there to sleep so he can go back and work again. And there's that like Americana low class stereotype that you kind of picture in that time. And like you said, it forced Frank to kind of be raised by television with a mom who clearly loved him. He loved her. But at the end of the day, it was the authoritarian. It was the patriarch of the family that provided, but then that got home and expected everything to kind of just come his way because he's the one that works so hard, and it's not so much that I'm doing this to make my family happy. It's I fed them. They should be happy.
Right. I mean, you can tell that. I think that was the most telling of all the scenes, was just that, like Triple M said, the TV just, alluded to his future career and how important that was to him. And then his father, like you said, Brendan, just showing like the work ethic and but also the aloofness. He just was there, but just because he was probably exhausted, and he put food on the table, and he was proud of the gift that he gave his little Frankie.
That was veal, baby.
That's 4 pounds of veal, and so that shows that even though there was a lot of love from his mom in that time, that got overridden by what was going on in the television, and then what was going on with his dad. So clearly that had a bigger impact on him, because he knew what a good relationship looked like with his mom, because they clearly were affectionate towards each other, and and he loved her and she loved him. But then that didn't translate to him then prioritizing his relationship with Claire when he had the opportunity to.
Right. Well, and that does bring me back to that quick thing I pointed out in the Frisbee the dog show moment, when the president, invites him to dinner, and she says, "Oh, we can't go to dinner. We have dinner plans." And the communication there, and I mean, I think this actually clarifies it more for me, and it's the reflection of his own father in the first scene, where it's work, and your family gets provided for, and if they're happy, okay, great byproduct. But I'm just working, I'm making the money, I'm paying the bills. And their lack of communication between Claire and Frank in that situation, when she says, "Well, we already made plans, we've been planning this for a month," and he said, "Well, we can have dinner with them anytime." I don't get that. I don't always get a chance to go have a dinner with the president of the network. And in reality, Clearly, they'd been together for a while. This was after the Kama Sutra, like living in squalor, romantic loft apartment scene. But she should have known long before this moment that he was incredibly driven career-wise, that he was on TV making an ass of himself in a little dog costume to further his career as he started as a male guy, at this network. And then this opportunity comes along. President of the network wants to get to know him, wants him to make an impression on him. And there could have been a much more pragmatic conversation. Now, that doesn't work in cinema, probably.
Right.
But it could have also resolved a lot of the issue between them. He could have said, like, I completely understand that this is not at all convenient. We have had plans with them, and I do want to see them. However, this is my shot. I have to take this shot because I've been breaking my back on this show, and this is like this little 6-hour period of time that I have between now and the end of dinner to make an impression on the president of this network. If you'd like to join me, that'd mean a lot to me, and we could probably talk to our friends and let them know what's going on, and it's Christmas. I'm sure they'll be cool with it. Or you could say, if you really want to have dinner with them, I totally understand that. I just need to go do this, and then I will join you after. I promise that I will join you after. My priority is you, but also the further in my career and the growth of our relationship and what we want to do with our lives. But none of that's brought to the surface. It's just like, well, I want to do what I want to do, and you need to stop being so selfish, and her being hurt and saying, okay, I understand, and then maybe we need to take a break, and then they just break up right there. When in reality, like, a real conversation would have been like, this is a huge opportunity. Let's figure out a compromise between these two.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing too, that like, that I was thinking that as I was watching, like, man, that's a good opportunity. You got to take that when that comes along. The big boss is paying attention to you. Totally agree with what you're saying, Brenton. That a good conversation could be had. And I actually kind of think in that moment, which he did kind of, he came back around to it when he went and when he was talking to himself when he went to see Claire. Then the second time at that place where she worked, he kind of said, I think he felt a bit abandoned by her in that moment. Kind of probably brought back some of the same feelings that he had with his dad, from early on. That here I thought we had this relationship that was more like me and my mom, but now I'm actually kind of feeling like you want from me, but you're not willing to give back, type thing. So that's kind of what it reminded me of. It probably brought about old feelings, but totally agree. Just they should have been further than that in their relationship, from an understanding standpoint.
Right.
And that's an excellent point, though. I didn't even draw the parallels between his little, almost not psychotic, but rambling of a madman monologue outside the shelter on his way in. And it is about, you didn't let me do this, and why did you abandon me? And all I wanted to do was to succeed. And like, basically I got punished for that because I had drive, because I had ambition. And then he walks into the shelter. We got another wild and woolly one, and and it's that whole scene. Yeah. But I didn't even take that little bit of dialogue or monologue, as it were, into consideration until you just pointed that out. But that is a fantastic parallel between the fact that he did want to be with her. He didn't want to break up. He just also wanted to succeed at his job, and that little monologue was his realization that, like, this is also on you. You left me. I was trying to do something big, and you could have been a part of that, and you decided to walk away because I didn't go to dinner that night.
Yeah, and I think that also shows the primary motivations of each character, where Claire was always thinking about other people, and not necessarily him in that case, but their friends, and saying, hey, we made plans, we made a commitment. That's, to me, that's more important than this opportunity that you might have. And so because we love our friends and we made a commitment to them, that's more important. And then, in those other scenes, trying to help the people at the shelter get things sorted out, and, get the turkey sorted out, et cetera, and always sort of putting other people first. And whereas Frank, kind of put himself first. And, again, not to take away from the fact that, again, that should have been a more mature conversation and didn't have to end in the relationship ending, but yeah, it just shows the various motivations there, and how Frank wasn't really ready to put his own needs aside in that case, or really in any of the other cases, until, again, he saw that his life was going to end and no one would be there to send him off.
Well, that was like her version of the career aspiration in a way, right? Like as driven as he was to move forward in his career, her passion was connection and human connection and helping other people. And so, not to be repetitive, but it all comes back down to that they both should have been understanding of what each other was driven by and how they could work together.
Just use your word, people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and also it kind of makes you wonder if that was sort of meant to be as well, because if they were both motivated so differently, maybe that was just not the best time for them to be together. That's also sometimes relationships need a break while people pursue different things that interest them. If they're not going to be supporting each other, if they can't, physically, mentally can't be there for the other person in the way that they need, maybe that relationship did need a break. And so maybe that was kind of for the best at the time.
What's a good argument? I always wondered when people take that break, I'm somewhere else right now. I need to do this without distraction. And the other person says, well, I need this from you. We both care about each other, but we're not in the same place. So we're going to break up and hope that if it's supposed to happen, we'll come back together. And the other side of me, I guess the eternal optimist or the naivete of a romantic would be, well, if it's right, then you would work to find a balance between what you thought was a priority and what should also be a priority because you found that. Because of the mathematical improbability of finding a counterpart,
right?
Just straight numbers. You find someone that you care about that much, they care about you that much, and but I'm also chasing my career. Okay, well, I understand that. I'm still wanting to be part of your life while you pursue that. Not, okay, go do that. And then when you're done with that, then we can focus on us. And I don't love that ideal. And I mean, from one side, it's incredibly pragmatic. All right, go do your thing, and I'll go do my thing. And then hopefully we end up again. But like, we have a mutual friend who I think has a really healthy marriage, and that they have that kind of structured time where they are dedicated. This is our time together. So no, we're not able to hang out right now. But then also a lot of their time is spent separately pursuing what they want to pursue. And I've always found that incredibly amicable of them. I don't think it's a common trait in a lot of relationships, as I think a lot of relationships tend to be kind of codependent. But really they are two people much more symbiotic than they are codependent. And I think that's incredibly healthy and something to strive to.
Yeah, what you're describing there sounds like a really healthy relationship. And I know you guys like to watch stuff, Joe. I've mentioned this to you before, but I'm telling you, if you've never watched the show Normal People on Hulu, it's a show. It's like, I want to say like 12 episodes, maybe, based on a book by an author named Sally Rooney. And it's about this couple that kind of gets together in high school. They're both from different walks of life, but they get together and then it's that exact thing. They bounce in each other's lives over the next several years and just never, they'll be together for a little bit, then they'll have a reason that they split. And it's all about that dynamic of like, maybe it's just not right now. And then maybe a little later it is, but then it becomes not right again. And it's just a fantastic show. It's got two people that have blown up since then. That one of them's Paul Mescal. He just hosted Saturday Night Live the other night. He's in Gladiator 2. He's been in a couple things. And Daisy Edgar-Jones, who was in Twisters and Where the Crawdads Sing and a few other movies recently. But just fantastic show. I watched it, and then I made my wife watch it back with me. I just thought it was so good. But it totally follows that relationship dynamic.
That was called Normal People?
Yeah. Yep. So
okay, cool.
From maybe like 2020 or 2021, I think it came out on Hulu.
Gotcha.
Just side note, Gladiator 2 was disappointing. Go on.
Yeah, I wasn't in any hurry to go see that, to be honest.
After the triumph of the first film.
Yeah, exactly. The first film, we're getting off topic for sure, but that first film was prolific, and the second film was a regurgitation.
Yeah, like just leave it alone. Like the first one was so good. Just it's fine. You don't have to try to do anything extra.
And that's where we are, though, with media and with specifically with cinema. I am an avid moviegoer. I spend half of my month on the road, and in the evenings after my work's done, I go pass the time in a movie theater. So I see 6 to 8 movies a month in the theater still. I like the ritual of it. I like where I'm kind of isolated in the theater. I'm not on my phone. I'm actually watching a movie in the format that it's meant to be seen in. But that being said, the vast majority of films anymore are just, and it used to be like, oh, there's recurring themes. It's not even recurring themes. Now it's rebooting titles that were successful, or it's smashing a franchise into obliteration by taking it 10 steps too far past its prime. And I'm a massive MCU fan, and the last good MCU film was Endgame, and everything since then has just been a letdown, but it's been a moneymaker for Disney, so that's all that matters. And the cinema is just a money printer for Hollywood anymore, and it's not a lot of original films. And to kind of bring it back to what we're watching, sure, Scrooged is a Christmas Carol, but as a kid, I didn't even know it was a Christmas Carol. I'd never even read the book. I'd never seen the original. That wouldn't appeal to me as a kid, but I loved Bill Murray, and so through that medium, I was able to actually witness classic literature in a much more palatable format. And then movies like The Griswolds and like those really kind of slapsticky but really wholesome feel-good comedies, they don't do well in the box office anymore because they're not some sequel or reboot or remix of something, or like an all-girl version of what used to be an all-male cast. Like, we don't need that stuff anymore. We need more original films.
Original stuff,
or movies that, I mean, I know you're an MCU guy, but so many movies are just complete CGI fests too. Like, sometimes I just want to see like a real, I love a good independent film where it's just a couple of actors just working their craft, telling a story. Sometimes I think there's not enough of that out there too. But that doesn't sell a lot of tickets.
Joe, what was the film we just watched? It was basically two people, guy on death row, but he was also possessed, or he thought he was possessed by a demon. The psychologist came in to assess whether or not he was. And it was like two scenes. It was almost a 2-hour film. There were, I think, 2 sets used for the whole film, and it was captivating.
Yeah.
It was such an incredible acting job that like we didn't even like talk throughout the movie. It was just like an incredible performance of 2 actors essentially in a jail cell.
Yeah. So yeah, probably cost $50,000 to make.
Probably.
And yet
I'm pretty sure they filmed in real prison.
On iPhones.
On iPhones.
Probably.
But there is a real lack of that, and so you kind of got to go diving into streaming platforms to find these movies that are now everything's direct to stream. Back in the day, if you went direct to VHS, it was your sentence to hell, or it was the third. It was the third sequel of some Disney film that made it big in the theater, and then they knocked out a couple to sell some VHS copies at home. And so now the theater is typically reserved for these massive multi-billion-dollar franchises. I think they have everything has its place, and I like large scale, and I do enjoy MCU films, and I think that films that are accomplishing things that you can't do without computers, and they do it well, and they spend the money on it, it's pretty mind-boggling. Even Inception and the way that they built that world and the dream worlds to almost kind of tangibly illustrate what we all kind of witness in our dreams and we can't bring into reality when we're trying to remember the dream. Somehow they captured that in that film, and Nolan knew exactly what he was doing with the prisming and like the worlds kind of folding in on themselves and all these like atmospheric origamis that were happening that were surreal but somehow still anchored. That kind of stuff's incredible, and I think there's absolutely a place for it. But I mean, to your point, Triple M, there's still absolutely a place for indie films and stellar acting and a storyline that just makes you stop and you want to know everything that's happening. You could watch 2 more hours of this happening because it pulled you away from reality and it brought you into somebody else's life.
Yeah, I agree with you on all counts there. I mean, the way you talked about the the bigger movies, that was very well stated. One that I think just, it's one of those that anytime it's on, I find myself watching it, is Blue Valentine, back from, I think it was like 2010, Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams, where it kind of told the story. There was another very relationship-based story where they kind of got together in college time frame, and then it jumps back and forth between that and their married life later on, where things aren't going so well. But just a couple of good actors showing a lot of emotion in their roles. Just that one is another one for me that always sticks in my mind. It's just a great kind of small budget, really, really, really good acting. You realize how good of an actor Ryan Gosling is.
Blue Valentine sounds super familiar, but I can't place it. I'm gonna have to Google that in a minute. I feel like I've seen it, especially with Michelle Williams in it. But I'm gonna have to revisit that. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. Well, I think that also highlights the importance of writing in films. I think it feels like a lot of times even the comedies now are just kind of going for cheap laughs, whereas I feel like, not that, again, Christmas Vacation is highbrow by any means, but looking at that and seeing just the quality of the little quips and the one-liners and the reactions from Chevy Chase, I mean, I think he pulls it off flawlessly. And I think he's one of the only guys that could pull that off and make it seem like he is kind of that bumbling dad, but also still, like, again, relatable and funny and someone that you want to succeed. But that, to kind of bring it back for a second, I was thinking that there's, like, the tension in Scrooged is between, will he get back with Claire or won't he, and will he overcome his flaws to do that and to kind of swallow his pride and get back with her. Whereas in the vacation films, like Christmas Vacation specifically, Ellen is ride or die for Clark, and she gets mad at him sometimes, and they have their little squabbles and stuff, but they're a solid couple, and she's there to support him. And she, again, questions his motive sometimes, but really it's all about being there for her man, and but still being a strong character, a strong person in her own right, and having opinions and stating when things get out of hand, trying to calm him down and stuff. And so definitely having a voice, so she's not just a ghost in the family that's there just to say yes and go about her business. But I think that's a strong indicator of that relationship. And but then there's that just one less thing where there's the tension, because she's always going to be there for him, which is great, but then the tension is created with the side characters. And I think that's one of the areas where Christmas Vacation shines, with like Cousin Eddie and Edna and in the original film. And so I think they do a good job with them.
And Beverly D'Angelo was a piece in the 80s, man. I thought she was so fine. I still think, like, she still looks good in that movie, man.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought it was interesting in Scrooge too, that it's one of the, that, like you guys said, that story has been told, numerous times, but that one, the fact that they're making a television or movie production about A Christmas Carol in the movie that ends up being A Christmas Carol, I thought was one of the more unique things about it. And I wanted to mention too, if you guys haven't seen the movie Spirited on Apple that came out like 2 years ago, it's another telling of A Christmas Carol, but it's Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell, and it is pretty entertaining as well.
I saw a lot of clips, not of the film, but of the production of it, because apparently, like, Reynolds and Will just like got along really well, so they did a lot of side content for social media. And I meant to see that, actually. As soon as you said Spirited, I was like, why do I know that title? I did mean to see the movie, didn't see the movie, but honestly, the chemistry between them just making their stupid content for little Instagram quips and TikToks and stuff was really, really funny. So I can imagine that film being pretty good.
Yeah, I think it was about a year and a half ahead of time, maybe, before it came out when they were making it. I believe there was, I forget which late night show it was, but they said Ryan Reynolds was going to be the guest, but Will Ferrell came out instead with no warning. So yeah, it was definitely some good vibes.
That's fantastic.
Nice.
To your point about the writing, which I think the magic of Christmas Vacation specifically is Griswold, is his. It's Chevy Chase, and like you said, only so many people could have pulled that role off. Maybe Steve Martin, Aykroyd, maybe just because of their delivery. But I'd like to think, much like Bill Murray, that Chevy does a decent amount of improv, and so he pulls off this character that is the pleasant family man father who's a good, role model for his kids, loves his kids very much, wants them to do well, and cares about them, and still has pride and still has his cynical, sarcastic, hilarious side that I think all of us have, and we have these little thoughts in our head, especially when we're having interactions in the professional world or places that I can say whatever I want to you, and I know it's either going to land as a joke or it's going to be taken seriously, and then that's the way it's supposed to be. But you have to filter yourself through emails and bullshit in the corporate world, and the whole Merry Christmas, yeah, Merry Christmas, kiss my ass, kiss your ass, kiss his ass, Happy Hanukkah, like. That shit's hysterical, and I don't know if someone sat down and put that, pen to paper and wrote that out, or if Chevy just did that as they came walking down the line, and they're like, "That's a beautiful take. We're leaving that in." I need to Google that to see if that was an improv or if it was directed, because those kind of throwaways. Same way, I mean, the bend over and I'll show you. You got a lot of nerve. I wasn't talking to you. Like these little quips of like, I'm not a pushover. I'm a happy guy. I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. I'm pretty upbeat in general. I'm not a pushover, and you can go fuck yourself if you think you're gonna ruin my good time.
Yep,
love it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of us, right? Trying to be good dudes, getting through life, navigating the world. But there's some tension underneath there. There's some things that you're not too happy about. But you just try to keep suppressed, and sometimes you can't.
Right. Sometimes I think Joe has a well of rage, and it's just slowly rising up that column. I'm gonna find it though. Don't worry, I'm gonna find it.
Make sure it's directed at someone else. You don't want none of this.
Point away from face. Light fuse, hold away from body.
Yeah, well, that's interesting too, because I just got to thinking, like, we were talking about a little bit of the class differences and stuff, but then we haven't mentioned the neighbors in Christmas Vacation until you had
the
that
neighbors
quote right there.
Man.
Oh,
and they are just the epitome of like the 80s and 90s yuppie,
I have those neighbors currently.
Yeah. So yeah, they're a real treat. And but again, to your point, he doesn't back down. He just defeats him with little with his humor, and but yet they don't know if he's serious or if he's joking,
right?
Which is great, and so that's why it comes off so so effectively.
Always keep them guessing.
Yep.
I don't know, Margot. I'm pretty sure my neighbor's name is Margot.
Oh boy.
Those silver jogging suits that they come in, like those garbage bag tracksuits from the early 90s, build up a sweat, is so hysterical. And then one of the cues I always notice it, and I noticed it from the first time through, when he falls over the back of the couch. And he's in all black vest and like a dress shirt and white socks and loafers.
Oh.
And it's killed me since I was a kid, and even as like a 6-year-old I was like, that's not right.
Instinctively we know that is a huge mistake.
Come on, man.
Absolutely. All right, well, I don't know, is there any other place you guys want to take this conversation, or should we wrap it up?
Well, I would love to hear if either of you guys have a cousin Eddie, someone that when they showed up to the Christmas party or the family gathering, oh shit, here they are. And it was someone that everyone's like, yep, that's our blood, but it was like, but very far extended, and we're going to keep them at an arm's length the whole time.
I would say for me, it was the wife and the wife's family of one of my cousins. So it wasn't directly blood related, and in that case, there was just a lot of weird stuff. They should have never been married in the first place, kind of thing, and so that always caused some tension, just because it was, my cousin, of course, loved her, married her, they had some kids, and the kids were cool, and no complaints there, but it was the wife that really was just not a great fit with the family, and a lot of tension there. But she, half the time she stayed away because I think she just didn't want to deal with it. So yeah, got fairly lucky when it comes to the cousin Eddies of the world.
What about you, Triple M?
Yeah, I've got a cousin or two that had a tendency to say the things you wouldn't expect to hear most of the time. But yeah, not too bad. They're blood, so you love them. You put up with them, right?
Their blood. My uncle on my mom's side, my mom's brother is the cousin Eddie of this family for sure. And I fucking loved it as a kid, because he was a giant kid, basically. You didn't want to take him to places that were too nice because, he wouldn't give a fuck. I remember, so I don't know if you guys have these out in Ohio, but the Red Lion, which are these decrepit hotels now, but they used to be in the 90s, the Shiloh Inn and the Red Lion were like the Northwest's. They might as well have been the Ritz. They were super like middle class fancy hotels. And every Mother's Day, they'd host these massive Mother's Day brunch buffets. And one year we took, my dad, I think, took my grandma, my aunts, the whole family out. And somehow Scott got it. Well, Scott always gets invited. So he got invited and he showed up. And it's like you dress like you're going to church kind of a situation. You know, they had me in a button up and like my little Dockers or whatever. And Scott comes rolling in like a fucking tornado in a stained t-shirt with jeans halfway down his ass crack, and he's wearing water socks. Do you remember those water socks?
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, then like neoprene shoe with the sole on them. Yeah. And that's how he rolls into Mother's Day brunch. And I'm like, I want to sit by Uncle Scott. He's hilarious. And so we're going down the buffet, and they got this old tower of mini muffins. And so he grabs one, and there's a waiter there, and he's like, so how much are the mini muffins? It's a fucking buffet. And the server goes, oh, they're part of the buffet. They're complimentary stuff. He goes, they're free? And he grabs like 12 mini muffins, and he puts them in his pocket. And I'm dying laughing. My mom's mortified. And I've always identified my Uncle Scott with Cousin Eddie for sure, because he's that guy. He's the guy that'll blow bubbles in his chocolate milk to make the kids laugh, but he's also just kind of a classless nitwit.
Oh, yeah. That's classic. And as a kid, that's who I would want to hang out with too. So yeah, I don't blame you.
The fun
because they're behaving like you always get yelled at as a kid. You get yelled at for behaving like that, and here's a grown ass man, doing everything you want to do.
I'll admit to being that uncle sometimes. Sometimes I just do it because I know they can't discipline me anymore, and I know it'll make my nephews laugh.
Yeah. Speaking of that, reminds me too of my grandma and on my dad's side. She was great. Immigrated from Poland, and they loved the old country buffet, and it was always the gigantic plastic bag inside the gigantic purse. And so you never knew it was going to make its way in there, but it was oftentimes the dinner rolls. Those things went in by the dozens, and so in and out, paid for $9.99 for your trips to the buffet, and then probably got about $20 worth of bakery on the way out. So
that was the same as my grandma from the Philippines as well. I think it's something about that third world. We know what it's like. Yep. She would have 6 or 7 dinner rolls in her purse. I knew that, like, if I went to her purse, if I was hungry, there'd be something of substance.
Oh, yeah.
2 or 3 sleeves of saltines, like 40 packs of Sweet and Low, and then a bunch of rolls wrapped up in napkins or in a bag that she'd gotten from the hometown buffet is what we had out here instead of old country buffet.
Oh, yeah.
That's hysterical, though. I think that's actually a generational thing, though, because, like, I think grandmas from that age, and I think even, like, American grandmas who went through the Depression, same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Waste not, want not, right? Grab everything, put it in the purse, we'll use it later.
Absolutely.
That's what I was going to say. Depression era, big time, was my grandparents. Yeah, a lot of those behaviors. Hanging on to old, when we went through my grandparents' house, we found old, like, KFC, the styrofoam containers that, like, mashed potatoes came in, because, you can...
Perfectly good container.
Yeah, exactly.
That was always lottery at my Lola's house. There was 30 Pringles tins on that counter, and maybe one of them had Pringles in them. The rest of them would be like, oh, it's ginger. Oh, look, it's star anise. Look, this is just full of rice, uncooked rice.
Oh, there's a mouse in that one.
You know what? Leave that one closed. That wasn't supposed to be there. But containers served a lot of Cool Whip containers. Throw them in the dishwasher, and then now like, oh, let me get some Tupperware for you, and they'd break out the Kroger brand Cool Whip or whipped topping.
Yep.
And they'd put a meal in it for you. It just doesn't happen anymore. But it's funny with these reminiscings, or pardon me, the nostalgia of it. Like with these movies, the reason I love to watch them so much, and that I look forward to that annual rewatching of a movie, that we basically spend the 2 hours just saying the lines for them. And it's not about seeing a film and experiencing something we haven't. It's the familiarity of it, and it's the nostalgia. Every year as I grow older, Christmas becomes a little less magical, and I don't have kids to kind of reinstill that fun part of it. So I have less and less of the family tradition. So much, we have Christmas Eve night and we have Christmas Day, and that's about it. Back in the day, we would have family parties on different weekends, and then there'd be movies, and you'd be hanging out with like your high school buddies or whatever. So there's this whole aura about the Christmas season. And as I've gotten older, it just kind of starts to chip away and fade away, and that's adult life. But for those 2 hours that we're watching those films, I'm remembering the last 30 years of watching those films and where I was and what I felt when I was watching it last time. And I remember that, and it'll bring up memories that have nothing to do with it, but it just puts me in a different time. It's a little wormhole for me. And that's why I have that small catalog of like Christmas movies that I got to watch every year, or it's not Christmas.
Yeah, that's very well put. I mean, that's awesome. the nostalgia piece hits me. I was telling Joe when we were kind of talking about doing this, doing this conversation, that I like to look back at times, just what was life like in '88? You know what I mean? No cell phones.
It was awesome.
No computers, right? Just a simpler, maybe happier time in a lot of cases.
If anything, more naive.
Yeah. Yeah, you could argue the naivete a little bit.
But ignorance is bliss in so many ways.
Oh,
and
yeah.
without social media to ruin our day on it when you wake up, and without so much of this have to have it now, and I'm a total victim and an ideal model consumer of it, is the instant gratification, the not really savoring things, move on to the next, disposability, consume. I mean, I'm very much that way, and I understand that. I don't know if I'm gonna fix it. At least I'm a self-aware consumer, but more so, the thing I love specifically about a Christmas Vacation is that family Christmas vibe. And it's I'm stuck outside and I'm cold, but my dad needs help with Christmas lights. And I like looking at Christmas lights, so I'm going to be doing this. And I remember the first time he had me go up on the ladder instead of him, and I was probably like 10, 11, probably just old enough to probably be doing it at that time. Nowadays, I wouldn't trust a 15-year-old on the ladder, but like,
right.
I feel like we were more capable children than they are now. And that's such an old man thing to say, but I really do believe that. And I remember my mom came out, and I'm up on the rafters, and she was like, "What are you doing up there?" And I was so stoked to be up there and like terrified at the same time, like white knuckling the ladder. But watching Christmas Vacation brings back a lot of the memories of like being a kid, and like Grizz kind of being, my dad wasn't very like an exact archetype of Griswold, but like that same just kind of 80s, 90s dad that like when you see it, it makes you feel very nostalgic for your own childhood. And like, because we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and quite frankly, I think we had the best timeline to be kids. We're kind of the worst timeline to be adults. So we didn't know that was going to go hand in hand, but
right.
We really did have the best of so many worlds because we had some technology coming into play. We had video games, but they weren't what they are now. They were still, if you want to call it austere as far as digital tech goes, a Super Nintendo was the fucking cutting edge of the world, 16-bit gaming system. But you spent a couple hours on that, and then you went and you rode your bike around, and then you went and actually had a childhood, and you had your little gang, your friends like, in your neighborhood, and they were friends just because they lived 3 doors down from you, not because you had a tremendous amount in common. Other than your geographic location, you couldn't cross the street without, holding your parents' hand.
Yep.
So you had these little gangs of kids. And the 80s and 90s kids, I think, were the last of that generation. And the go ride your bikes during the summertime, and as long as you're home before the streetlights come on, you're good, And it's easy to wax poetic about it now, but I just don't think my nieces and nephews will ever get that vibe. They'll never have that sense of like false independenthood that we had as kids. Like we're out doing our own thing, and I didn't have to call my parents. They didn't have a way to call my phone to to figure out where it was. They just knew that I knew when to come home.
Yep.
And there's so much value in that I think future generations are just never going to have, because they can just track them on their phone, and they can just do this and this. They can digitally, censor them, or give a 9-year-old a cell phone and see how well he does as an adult. They're so socially awkward around strangers. And I think I've gone off on just kind of a rant about that, but it's just like specifically about Christmas Vacation that I love watching Russ helping his dad with the Christmas lights, because that was me. And I was just like, oh, why are these tangled every fucking year? This is really, he's like, oh, got a little knot there.
Little knot there.
You can work on that, I just loved the simplicity of it. And there was a lot of waiting in general, because stuff just didn't happen instantaneously. Now it does. Now it's like, hey, I want to know a fact. Okay, I want to know that fact in about 6 seconds. I'm going to forget it in about 20 seconds, but I'll know it in 6 seconds. And it wasn't that way back then. If you wanted to know something bad enough, you went to the 1988 printed Encyclopedia Britannica that your parents bought 20 years back, and you hoped that it was still current enough that you could learn whatever the hell you were trying to figure out.
That was sold to you by a door-to-door salesman usually.
1000%. And I remember packing up those damn encyclopedias when we moved. And my dad was like, never again. And thank God the internet happened. But at the time, that was like a centerpiece of the family room, was this giant set of Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
And to Triple M's part about, going through his grandparents' house, and they had all these leftover. When we moved my grandma finally into an assisted care in the last couple of years, we as a family went through her house. My dad just like hired a dumpster, put it in the driveway, and we're just like emptying the house. And we're talking 3 decades worth of Reader's Digest.
Ooh.
I mean, a library of Reader's Digest, which I don't even know what the fuck that is.
My mom loves that shit.
What is it? Is it just periodical? What the hell is it?
Yeah, it's just this little magazine of stories. There's a lot of Christian themed stuff, like religious stuff, and
that makes sense. My grandma's pretty religious.
Yeah,
but the attic was half Reader's Digest. I couldn't understand what we were throwing away, but it was heavy because
very heavy.
Printed media, that's got some weight to it.
Well, it's funny, man. I'm sitting here cracking up while you're telling that story, but both the Reader's Digest and the encyclopedias. I mean, I remember, trying to write book reports as a kid, or report on something as a kid, and you could, to your point, you could go grab this book off the shelf, and you might get like half a page of information about something, where now you could go read 15 articles right now. Or pieces of information about something. Heck, Wikipedia alone, you know what I mean? More information. But I think there was such a tendency to hang on to that stuff like the Reader's Digest because that was your internet back then, right? Like, hey,
that was your entertainment.
Yeah, I read something good in this issue, so I'm going to keep it because I may need to go back and read that at some point.
Absolutely.
But what you were saying too about the, kind of the social isolation with cell phones and stuff, everybody. And I don't, want to get into too controversial topics here on this one, but like everybody likes to blame COVID. Oh, these kids don't know how to socialize because of COVID, and we locked them up and kept them home. It's like, man, that was already in motion before that. In the last 15 years of kids having these cell phones and stuff, and I mean, it's one of those things where you can't. I hate to say it, parents today can't really say no to it because it's happening, but it's not. It's not
right.
Good
you
at
want
the
your
same
kid
time.
to be the only one in school without a phone.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want your kid to be ostracized.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost parental peer pressure at that point because who's the first parent that fucked it up for everybody?
It really kind of is. Yeah, and they're getting phones younger and younger.
Yeah, I remember my oldest nephew, he's 16 now. And I remember on his 9th or 10th birthday, he's like, I want a phone. And I was like, who the hell are you going to call, man? Do you know what phones are for? They're for calling people or texting people. And are you going to text your mom? Are you going to text Grammy? Like, why do you need a phone? He's like, well, my friend has a phone. I was like, okay. Why does he have? Who are you guys calling? You going to Uber? I just didn't understand the necessity for it. And I'm glad I got my first cell phone when I got my driver's license. My dad gave me his old cell phone, and it was the whole keep it in the car, emergencies only kind of a cell phone. Until one day I took it into school and just started using it. Just tried to see if I could get away with it. He never said anything about it. And I've been using that same number ever since.
Oh, man.
Well, some of that, real quick. So some of that comes, see, that's one thing I have. And Joe's probably heard me say this before, it's easy to sit here and go, oh, these kids are like this now. But
grumble.
Well, but what you got to do is you got to look up, right? Because a lot of times the parents are putting the phone in the kids' hands because they're saying, "Well, I need to be able to get a hold of Joey. I need to know where Joey is." You know what I mean? And it's not the kids that are afraid to go out and play out until dark and know when to come home. It's the parents that are afraid to let them. You know what I mean? Because every generation always says, "Oh, things are so much crazier that they were when I was a kid." Well, if that was true, if that was getting exponentially worse every generation, then we would be like in end times with,
Mad Max
gangs. Yeah, right. But it's really, I really don't
gasoline and bullets.
Exactly. I really don't think it's as true as we want to tell ourselves sometimes.
No, but that's an incredibly well put point. Is to look at what's causing it. It's not the kid saying, here's my phone that I bought with my money.
Right. Yeah, very true. All right, well, that was an awesome trip down memory lane, and I think a great conversation.
Watch both movies if you haven't.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us this week, and we hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, and we will see you again soon.